I never thought my own sister would try to destroy the one thing that represented hope for my future family. But when I walked into my nursery that Tuesday morning and saw what Madison had done to my baby's crib, I knew our relationship was over. What I didn't expect was how my husband, Commander Jake Sullivan, would handle it when he found out. Let me tell you what happened.
I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. 3 months ago, I was living what I thought was my dream life. Jake and I had just bought our first house together in Virginia Beach, a charming 2-story colonial with a white picket fence and enough space for the family we desperately wanted to start. After 2 years of marriage and countless fertility treatments, we had finally received the news we'd been praying for. I was pregnant. Jake was deployed with the Atlantic Fleet when I called him with the news. Even through the crackling satellite connection, I could hear the joy in his voice. "Denise, are you serious? We're really having a baby?" He was scheduled to return in 6 weeks, just in time for my second trimester, and we spent hours on video calls planning our future. The first thing I did after confirming the pregnancy was start preparing the nursery. It became my obsession, my sanctuary. I spent weeks researching every detail, from the soft sage green paint that would work for either a boy or girl, to the handcrafted wooden crib I found at a local artisan shop in Norfolk. That crib wasn't just furniture to me, it was a symbol of everything Jake and I had worked toward. The crib itself was a masterpiece, crafted from solid cherry wood by an elderly carpenter named Mr. Henderson, who had been making baby furniture for 40 years. It featured intricate carved details along the headboard, delicate vines, and tiny flowers that seemed to dance in the afternoon sunlight. The wood had a rich, warm glow that made the entire room feel magical. It cost us nearly $2,000, money we had saved specifically for our future child, and every penny felt worth it. My sister Madison had always been the wild card in our family. At 26, she was 3 years younger than me, but had never quite found her footing in life. She dropped out of college twice, bounced between jobs, and had a habit of making impulsive decisions that left everyone else cleaning up the mess. Our parents had always enabled her behavior, constantly bailing her out of financial trouble or relationship drama. When Jake deployed and I found myself alone in our new house while pregnant, Madison asked if she could stay with me for a few weeks. She claimed she was between apartments and needed time to get back on her feet after her latest breakup. Against my better judgment, I said yes. I thought maybe this would be an opportunity for us to grow closer, for her to help me prepare for the baby. The first week went smoothly enough. Madison seemed genuinely excited about becoming an aunt, offering to help with nursery preparations and even suggesting we go shopping for baby clothes together. She admired the crib when I showed her the completed nursery, running her fingers along the carved details and commenting on how beautiful it was. But by the second week, cracks began to show. Madison started bringing guys over at all hours, throwing impromptu parties while I was trying to rest. She left messes throughout the house, dishes piled in the sink, clothes scattered in the guest room, empty bottles and takeout containers on every surface. When I gently asked her to be more considerate, she'd roll her eyes and mutter about how I'd become boring since getting married. The real tension started when Madison's ex-boyfriend Trevor began showing up unannounced. Trevor was bad news, a guy with a criminal record who dealt drugs and had a violent temper. I'd never liked him during their relationship, and I certainly didn't want him in my home, especially now that I was pregnant. When I told Madison this, she exploded. "You can't control who I see, Denise. Just because you're married to some military guy doesn't make you better than me." She stormed out that night, only to return the next morning acting as if nothing had happened. Things escalated when Madison started using our house as a base for her increasingly erratic behavior. She'd disappear for days at a time, then return with different guys, using my address for deliveries I didn't recognize, and treating our home like a hotel. I found drug paraphernalia in the guest bathroom and confronted her immediately. "Madison, I'm pregnant. I can't have this stuff in my house. You need to get your act together or find somewhere else to stay." "Oh, so now you're kicking out your own sister? Wait until Mom and Dad hear about this. They always said you were selfish, but I never believed them until now." The manipulation was classic Madison, turning herself into the victim while completely ignoring the legitimate concerns I have raised. But I held firm. I gave her 1 week to clean up her act or find alternative living arrangements. That's when Madison's behavior took a darker turn. She became passive-aggressive, making snide comments about my pregnancy weight, criticizing Jake's frequent deployments, and questioning whether we were really ready to be parents. She'd move things around the house just to mess with me, leave lights on all night, and invite people over specifically when I had early morning appointments. The breaking point came when I discovered Madison had been going through my personal belongings. I found her in our bedroom one afternoon, rifling through my jewelry box. When confronted, she claimed she was just looking for a necklace she thought she'd left there, but I knew she was lying. That night, I called Jake and told him everything.
Jake's voice went cold in a way I'd rarely heard before. Denise, you need to get her out of there immediately. I don't care if she's your sister. She's putting you and our baby at risk. But before I could act on Jake's advice, Madison made her move. It was a Tuesday morning, and I had a routine prenatal appointment. I'd been gone for about 2 hours, just long enough for the ultrasound and checkup with Dr. Martinez. Everything looked perfect with the baby, and I was excited to share the new photos with Jake during our scheduled call that evening. I came home humming softly to myself, carrying the ultrasound images and a small bag of prenatal vitamins. The house seemed unusually quiet, but I didn't think much of it initially. Madison often slept until noon, especially after her late-night activities. But as I walked upstairs toward our bedroom, I heard something that made my blood run cold. The sound of splintering wood coming from the nursery. I dropped everything and rushed toward the sound, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might be dangerous for the baby. What I found when I opened the nursery door was beyond anything I could have imagined. Madison was standing in the middle of the room with a sledgehammer in her hands, pieces of the beautiful cherry wood crib scattered around her feet like fallen leaves. The carved headboard that had taken Mr. Henderson weeks to create was split completely in half. The side rails were shattered, and the mattress support had been reduced to splinters. She looked up at me with wild eyes, her face flushed with exertion and what I can only describe as pure malice. "Oops," she said with a twisted smile. "Looks like there was an accident." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The room spun around me as I stared at the destruction. Months of careful planning, thousands of dollars, and most importantly, the symbol of our future family, all reduced to broken pieces scattered across the nursery floor. "What have you done?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. Madison dropped the sledgehammer with a loud clang that echoed through the house. "What I should have done weeks ago. You want me gone so badly? Fine, but I'm not leaving empty-handed." "Empty-handed? Madison, this is my baby's crib. How could you?" "Your perfect little baby, your perfect little husband, your perfect little life," she spat, kicking at a piece of the carved headboard. "Do you know how sick I am of hearing about how wonderful everything is for you? Poor little Madison can't get her life together, while Saint Denise has it all figured out." The cruelty in her voice was something I'd never heard before, not even during our worst childhood fights. This wasn't just sibling rivalry or jealousy. This was calculated destruction meant to cause maximum pain. "Get out," I managed to find my voice, though it was shaking with rage. "Get out of my house right now." Madison laughed, a harsh sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh, I'm leaving, but first, let me tell you something, sister dear. That precious military husband of yours, he's not coming back from this deployment the same person. They never do. And when he changes, when he becomes distant and cold, you'll remember this moment and realize I did you a favor." She pushed past me, her shoulder deliberately bumping mine as she headed for the door. "I'll be out in an hour. Try not to have a breakdown before then. It might hurt the baby." I stood frozen in that destroyed nursery long after I heard Madison's footsteps on the stairs, long after the front door slammed shut with enough force to rattle the windows. The late morning sun was still streaming through the sage green curtains, illuminating the devastation like a crime scene. My hands instinctively went to my belly, where our 15-week-old baby was growing, completely unaware that the first piece of furniture bought with love had been destroyed before they even had a chance to sleep in it. The ultrasound photos I dropped in the hallway seemed like artifacts from a different lifetime when I'd been happy and excited just 30 minutes earlier. I called Jake immediately, but the call went straight to his voice message system. The Atlantic Fleet was conducting training exercises, and communication windows were limited. I tried 3 more times over the next hour, each attempt ending with the same automated message about naval communication protocols. Finally, I sat down on the nursery floor among the wreckage and recorded a video message on my phone. My voice was steadier than I expected, but Jake would be able to see the destruction behind me, the tears I was trying to hold back, the way my hands shook as I held the camera. "Jake, something's happened. Madison destroyed the baby's crib while I was at my appointment today. She's gone now, but..." I paused, looking around at the scattered wood pieces. "I don't know what to do. I can't clean this up by myself, and I keep thinking about how Mr. Henderson put so much work into making it perfect for us. I'm sorry. I know you have more important things to worry about right now, but I need you to know."
A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The waiting was the worst part. Navy communication delays meant I wouldn't hear back from Jake for at least 6 hours, maybe longer depending on their training schedule. I spent the afternoon sitting in our living room, unable to bring myself to go back into the nursery, unable to focus on anything else. Around 4 o'clock, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Denise, honey, Madison just called us. She's very upset about some kind of fight you two had. She said you kicked her out without warning?" I closed my eyes, recognizing Madison's manipulation immediately. She'd gotten to our parents first, spinning the story to make herself the victim before I could explain what really happened. "Mom, did she tell you what she did to the baby's crib?" There was a pause. "She mentioned there was some kind of accident." "It wasn't an accident. She took a sledgehammer to it while I was at my prenatal appointment. She destroyed it completely." "Oh, Denise, surely it was just..." "Mom, stop. There's no excuse for what she did. She deliberately destroyed something irreplaceable because she was angry about me setting boundaries." The conversation went in circles for 20 minutes, with my mother suggesting that Madison was going through a difficult time and that maybe I should try to understand her perspective. It was the same enabling behavior that had allowed Madison to avoid consequences her entire life. I hung up feeling more isolated than ever. Jake was unreachable, my parents were taking Madison's side, and I was alone in a house that no longer felt safe or peaceful. That evening, I finally forced myself to go back into the nursery. I needed to document the damage for insurance purposes, though I doubted our policy would cover intentional destruction by a family member. I took photos from every angle, each image a painful reminder of what we'd lost. As I knelt down to examine some of the carved pieces more closely, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The destruction wasn't random or impulsive, it was systematic. Madison had specifically targeted the most intricate and irreplaceable parts of the crib first. The hand-carved vines that Mr. Henderson had spent weeks perfecting were completely obliterated, while some of the simpler structural pieces were merely damaged rather than destroyed. This wasn't the result of an emotional outburst. Madison had planned this attack, choosing her targets carefully to ensure maximum devastation with minimum chance of repair. I found Mr. Henderson's business card in my desk drawer and called him, dreading the conversation. His voice was warm and grandfatherly when he answered, clearly pleased to hear from me. "Mr. Sullivan, how is that beautiful crib working out for you and the little one?" "Mr. Henderson, I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, but the crib was destroyed today. My sister, there was a family situation and she damaged it beyond repair." The silence on the other end stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped.
Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with disappointment. Mr. Sullivan, I've been making baby furniture for 40 years, and that crib was one of my finest pieces. The wood came from a cherry tree on my grandfather's property that we'd been aging for over a decade. Those carvings, each vine took me 3 days to complete. I know, I'm so sorry. Is there any way to recreate it? Another long pause. The wood alone would take years to properly age. And honestly, at my age, I don't think I have another piece like that in me. That crib was meant to be passed down through generations. After hanging up, I cried for the first time since discovering the destruction. Not just for the crib, but for everything it represented. The future we'd planned, the family traditions we'd hoped to start, the sense of security I'd felt in my own home. It was nearly midnight when my phone finally rang with Jake's ringtone. He was calling from the ship's communication center during his designated personal call window. Denise, I got your message. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? Just hearing his voice made me less alone. We're physically fine, but Jake, you need to see what she did. It's not just broken, it's completely destroyed. Send me the photos right now. I transmitted the images through our secure messaging app, then waited as Jake reviewed them. The silence stretched for several minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed completely. Gone was the warm, concerned husband. What I heard now was Commander Jake Sullivan, and his tone was colder than Arctic ice. Denise, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Tomorrow morning, you're going to file a police report for destruction of property. You're going to document everything: the cost, the irreplaceable nature of the craftsmanship, the deliberate targeting of the most valuable components. Do you understand?
Jake, she's my sister. She stopped being your sister the moment she picked up that sledgehammer. This isn't a family disagreement anymore, Denise. This is a criminal act against my pregnant wife and unborn child, and I'm not going to let it slide. The next morning, I drove to the Virginia Beach Police Department with a folder full of photographs, receipts, and Mr. Henderson's detailed invoice showing the crib's value and craftsmanship specifications. Officer Patricia Williams, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, listened patiently as I explained the situation. Mrs. Sullivan, I have to ask, are you sure you want to press charges against your sister? Family disputes can be complicated, and once we file this report, there's no taking it back. Officer Williams, if a stranger had broken into my home and destroyed $2,000 worth of my property, what would you do? She nodded slowly. I'd investigate it as breaking and entering with destruction of property. The relationship doesn't change the crime. The report took 2 hours to complete. Officer Williams was thorough, asking detailed questions about Madison's access to the house, the timeline of events, and whether I felt threatened by her behavior. When I mentioned Trevor and the drug paraphernalia, her expression grew more serious. Mrs. Sullivan, I'm going to be honest with you. Based on what you've described, your sister may have been using your home as a base for illegal activities. The destruction of the crib could be connected to substance abuse or other criminal behavior. We'll need to investigate this fully. I left the police station feeling both relieved and terrified. Relief that someone in authority was taking the situation seriously. Terror at the thought that I might have unknowingly harbored criminal activity in my home while pregnant. That afternoon, Jake called again during his next communication window. His voice was crisp and businesslike. Did you file the report? Yes, Officer Williams said they'll investigate it as destruction of property and possibly more. Jake, she thinks Madison might have been using our house for drug activities. Good, that gives us additional leverage. Now I need you to do something else. Contact our insurance company and get a full assessment of the damage. Then call a locksmith and have all the locks changed immediately. Madison still has keys. I hadn't even thought about the keys. The realization that she could return any time made my skin crawl. Jake, when are you coming home? My deployment was scheduled to end in 2 weeks, but I'm working on expediting that. In the meantime, I'm making some other arrangements for your protection and to address Madison's behavior. What kind of arrangements? Trust me, Denise. Your sister thinks she can attack my family without consequences. She's about to learn how wrong she is.
The cryptic response should have worried me, but honestly, I felt safer knowing Jake was handling things from his end. I'd never seen him in full military commander mode, and there was something reassuring about his complete control of the situation. The locksmith arrived within 3 hours, an efficient man named Carlos who replaced every lock in the house and installed additional deadbolts on both the front and back doors. As he worked, he chatted casually about home security. You'd be surprised how many people never change their locks after family disputes. Your husband called this in as a priority security upgrade. Seems like a smart guy. Jake called you directly? Yeah, about an hour ago. Paid for the premium service package over the phone, said to make sure you felt completely secure in your own home. I realized Jake was orchestrating everything from hundreds of miles away, using military precision to secure our home front while dealing with naval operations. It was both impressive and slightly overwhelming to see his strategic mind applied to our personal crisis. That evening, my mother called again. Denise, I heard you went to the police about Madison. How could you involve law enforcement in a family matter? Mom, she destroyed property worth thousands of dollars. That's not a family matter, it's a crime. She's your sister. Family should stick together, especially during difficult times. Madison is struggling right now, and instead of helping her, you're making things worse. The conversation followed the same frustrating pattern as before, with my mother defending Madison's actions and minimizing the damage. Finally, I'd had enough.
Mom, let me ask you something. If Madison had destroyed something precious of yours, Dad's military medals or Grandma's wedding ring, would you be telling me to forgive and forget? The line went quiet. My father's bronze star and my grandmother's antique jewelry were sacred in our family, symbols of sacrifice and tradition that my mother treasured above almost everything else. That's different, Denise. No, it's not. This crib represents our future, our family, our dreams. Madison knew exactly what it meant to us, and she destroyed it deliberately. The fact that you can't see how cruel that was tells me everything I need to know about where your priorities lie. I hung up and turned off my phone. For the first time in my life, I was cutting contact with my parents, and it felt both liberating and heartbreaking. The next few days passed in a strange calm. The new locks made me feel secure, the police were conducting their investigation, and Jake called twice daily to check on me and coordinate various protective measures. I started sleeping better, eating regularly, and even began looking at new cribs online, though nothing could replace what Mr. Henderson had created. On Thursday afternoon, my peaceful recovery was interrupted by frantic pounding on my front door. Through the peephole, I saw Madison standing on my porch, her hair disheveled and her eyes wild with panic. "Denise, open this door right now. We need to talk." I stayed silent, my hand instinctively going to my belly. The baby had been moving more actively lately, as if responding to my stress levels. "I know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway." Madison's voice was getting higher, more desperate. "You have to fix this. You have to make it stop." What stops? I crept closer to the door, staying out of sight but trying to hear more clearly. "They froze my bank accounts, Denise. My credit cards aren't working. My landlord got some kind of legal notice, and now I'm being evicted. You did this. You and that military husband of yours." My blood went cold. Jake had said he was making arrangements, but I hadn't imagined he could reach into Madison's financial life from aboard a naval vessel in the Atlantic Ocean. Madison continued her rant, becoming increasingly unhinged. "I know it was him. Nobody else has that kind of power. You tell Jake Sullivan that if he doesn't back off, I'll make what I did to that stupid crib look like child's play." The threat against Jake crossed a line I didn't even know existed. Without thinking, I opened the door, but kept the chain lock engaged, creating just enough space to see Madison's face clearly. She looked terrible. Her skin was pale and blotchy, her clothes were wrinkled like she'd slept in them, and there was a manic energy in her movements that made me think of drug withdrawal or extreme stress. "You threatened my husband," I said quietly, "a deployed naval officer. Do you have any idea how serious that is?" Madison's expression shifted from desperation to rage.
Oh, spare me the military wife act. Your precious commander isn't here to protect you now. Actually, said a voice behind her, he sent me. Madison spun around to find herself face to face with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a crisp business suit and an expression of complete professionalism. Behind him stood two other men in similar attire, their stance and bearing unmistakably military despite their civilian clothes. Madison Fletcher? The first man asked politely. Who wants to know? My name is Lieutenant Commander Davis. I represent the interests of Commander Jake Sullivan and his family. You're going to need to come with us. Madison looked back at me through the crack in the door, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Denise, don't let them. Ma'am, Lieutenant Commander Davis interrupted smoothly, you have two choices. You can come with us voluntarily to discuss the resolution of this matter, or we can wait for the Virginia Beach Police Department to arrive and handle your outstanding warrant. What warrant? The one issued this morning for criminal threats against federal military personnel. Commander Sullivan recorded your voice message from yesterday, and making threats against deployed naval officers is a federal offense. I had no idea what voice message he was talking about, but Madison's face went white as a sheet. That's impossible. I never. You left a 30-second message on Commander Sullivan's personal voicemail at 0347 hours yesterday, in which you made specific threats against his person and referenced his current deployment location. Would you like us to play it back for you? Madison's face crumbled as the weight of her situation hit her. I was drunk when I called him. I didn't mean any of it. Federal law doesn't distinguish between sober threats and intoxicated ones, Lieutenant Commander Davis replied calmly. The intent to intimidate a military serviceman during active deployment is what matters. I watched through the door chain as Madison looked frantically between the three men, clearly calculating her chances of running. The second man, who hadn't spoken yet, seemed to read her thoughts. Ma'am, there are additional personnel positioned around the perimeter. I'd strongly advise cooperation. Madison's shoulders sagged in defeat. What do you want from me? Lieutenant Commander Davis pulled out a tablet and began reading from it. Madison Fletcher, age 26, currently unemployed, evicted from your apartment on Ocean View Drive as of this morning. Your bank accounts have been frozen pending investigation into suspicious transactions linked to Trevor Morrison, who is currently wanted by Norfolk Police for distribution of controlled substances. My sister's face went ash gray. How do you know about Trevor? Commander Sullivan provided us with a comprehensive briefing on your activities while residing in his home. The drug paraphernalia Mrs. Sullivan discovered, combined with Mr. Morrison's frequent visits, triggered a joint investigation between military police and local law enforcement. I felt a surge of pride mixed with amazement at Jake's thoroughness. He'd taken every detail I'd shared and turned it into a coordinated response that Madison never saw coming. Mrs. Sullivan, Lieutenant Commander Davis turned toward the door. Commander Sullivan asked me to inform you that he's arranged temporary housing for your sister at a rehabilitation facility in Richmond. All expenses will be covered, and completion of the program will satisfy the conditions for dropping the federal charges. Madison's head snapped up. Rehab? I don't need rehab. The alternative is federal prosecution, which carries a minimum sentence of 6 months in federal prison. Given your association with Mr. Morrison's drug operation, additional charges could extend that considerably. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of hope. Jake wasn't just punishing Madison, he was offering her a way out, a chance to get her life together while ensuring she couldn't hurt our family again. What about the crib? I asked through the door. What about the property damage? Lieutenant Commander Davis consulted his tablet again. Commander Sullivan has arranged for master craftsman William Chen from the Naval Academy's woodworking program to recreate the piece. Mr. Chen studied under traditional Japanese furniture makers and specializes in restoration of irreplaceable items. The new crib will be completed before your due date. Madison let out a bitter laugh. So that's it? Jake Sullivan snaps his fingers and everyone falls in line? He destroys my life because his precious wife got her feelings hurt? The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees as Lieutenant Commander Davis's professional demeanor shifted slightly. When he spoke again, his voice carried an edge of steel. Miss Fletcher, you seem to misunderstand the situation. You committed a felony against the pregnant wife of a deployed naval officer. Commander Sullivan showed remarkable restraint in offering rehabilitation instead of pursuing maximum prosecution. I suggest you accept his generosity. Madison looked at me one last time, her expression a mixture of hatred and desperation. This isn't over, Denise. Family is forever, and you can't hide behind your husband's military buddies forever. The threat sent chills down my spine, but Lieutenant Commander Davis stepped forward before I could respond. Actually, Miss Fletcher, it is over. As part of the rehabilitation agreement, you'll be signing a legally binding no-contact order. Any attempt to contact Mrs. Sullivan, Commander Sullivan, or their child will result in immediate arrest and federal prosecution. Your rehabilitation facility has strict communication monitoring, and any violation will be reported directly to military police. Madison was escorted to a black sedan that had appeared at the curb. As the car pulled away, Lieutenant Commander Davis handed me a business card through the door slot. Mrs. Sullivan, you'll have 24-hour security monitoring for the remainder of Commander Sullivan's deployment. If you need anything or feel threatened in any way, call the number on this card immediately. After they left, I sat in my living room trying to process what had just happened. In less than a week, Jake had orchestrated Madison's removal from my life, arranged for her rehabilitation, organized the creation of a new crib, and set up ongoing security for me and our baby. The scope of his response was both impressive and slightly terrifying. That evening, Jake called during his regular communication window. Did Lieutenant Commander Davis handle everything satisfactorily? Jake, how did you arrange all of this from a ship in the middle of the ocean? His laugh was warm for the first time since this crisis began. Denise, I command a fleet of vessels with thousands of personnel and coordinate with multiple branches of military and civilian law enforcement daily. Protecting my pregnant wife from one troubled civilian isn't exactly a challenge. The rehab facility, the security monitoring, the new crib, this must be costing a fortune. The security is provided through Military Family Protection Services, which we're entitled to during deployment. The rehab facility has a sliding scale payment system, and honestly, it's cheaper than legal fees would be. As for the crib, Master Chen owed me a favor from when I helped get his son into the Naval Academy prep program. I marveled at how Jake had turned personal relationships and military resources into a comprehensive solution. What happens when Madison gets out of rehab? That depends entirely on her. If she completes the program and abides by the no-contact order, she can rebuild her life somewhere far away from us. If she violates the terms, she goes to federal prison. Her choice. And my parents? Jake's voice hardened slightly. Your parents enabled Madison's behavior for years, and their first response to this crisis was to blame you instead of supporting their pregnant daughter. They made their choice too. The finality in his tone should have upset me, but instead I felt relieved. For years, I'd been caught in the middle of family dysfunction, trying to manage Madison's chaos while maintaining relationships with parents who refused to hold her accountable. Jake had given me permission to walk away from all of it. Over the following days, I began to feel like myself again. The security monitoring was invisible but reassuring. I never saw anyone, but Lieutenant Commander Davis checked in daily to confirm everything was peaceful. I started prenatal yoga classes, began planning the baby's room again, and even had lunch with my friend Sarah for the first time in weeks. Master Chen called to discuss the new crib, and his enthusiasm was infectious. Unlike Mr. Henderson's traditional American craftsmanship, Chen planned to incorporate subtle Asian-influenced design elements, cleaner lines, hidden joinery, and a finish that would develop character over generations of use. Commander Sullivan told me this piece needs to be even more special than the original, Chen explained during our video consultation. Not just furniture, but a symbol of your family's resilience and strength. A week later, I received an unexpected visitor, Officer Williams from the Virginia Beach Police Department. She came bearing good news and disturbing revelations. Mrs. Sullivan, we've completed our investigation into your sister's activities. The good news is that the charges against her are being handled through military channels as agreed. The concerning news is what we discovered about Trevor Morrison and his use of your home. She handed me a thick file folder. Morrison was using your address as a mail drop for drug shipments. We intercepted 3 packages addressed to fake names at your house, containing over 2 pounds of methamphetamine and fentanyl. If your sister hadn't destroyed that crib when she did, you might have been home when we executed the search warrant. My blood ran cold. You're saying Madison's rampage actually protected me? Unintentionally, yes. Morrison was planning to use your pregnancy and military family status as cover for his operation. The idea was that no one would suspect a pregnant Navy wife of harboring drugs. Madison's breakdown disrupted his timeline. The irony was staggering. Madison's attempt to hurt me had inadvertently saved me from being implicated in a federal drug operation. Officer Williams continued, Morrison has been arrested and is facing federal trafficking charges. He'll likely be in prison for the next 15 years. Your sister's cooperation with our investigation helped significantly in his conviction. She cooperated? The rehabilitation facility you arranged requires full disclosure of criminal activities as part of their program. Madison provided detailed information about Morrison's operations, his supply chain, and his plans to use your home. Her testimony was crucial in dismantling his entire network. I thought about Jake's strategic thinking. Even Madison's placement in rehab had served multiple purposes, protecting our family while generating intelligence that led to Morrison's capture. That night, when Jake called, I shared Officer Williams's revelations. I already knew about Morrison's plans, he said quietly. Military intelligence flagged the suspicious packages weeks ago. It's part of why I was so adamant about getting Madison out of your life immediately.
You knew our house was being used for drug trafficking? I suspected, based on Madison's behavior patterns and Morrison's criminal history. What I didn't know was the scale of the operation or how close you came to being implicated. When I get home next week, we're going to have a long conversation about security protocols for military families. Jake's return home was supposed to be a celebration, but when I picked him up from Naval Station Norfolk, the man who stepped off that transport plane was different from the husband who had left 3 months earlier. He looked older, more weathered, and carried himself with an authority that seemed to have intensified during his deployment. The first thing he did wasn't kiss me or ask about the baby. He conducted a complete security sweep of our house. I watched him move through each room systematically, checking windows, testing locks, examining sightlines from the street. It was like living with a professional bodyguard instead of my husband. Jake, the security team already cleared the house. Lieutenant Commander Davis said everything was secure. He paused in his inspection of the master bedroom window. Davis did excellent work, but I need to see it for myself. This is my family, my responsibility. That evening, as we sat in our living room catching up, Jake's phone rang constantly. Each call was brief and cryptic. Updates on Madison's progress in rehab, reports on Trevor Morrison's prosecution, coordination with various military and civilian agencies. I began to understand that my husband hadn't just solved our immediate crisis. He'd built an entire intelligence network around protecting our family. Don't you ever get to just turn it off? I asked after his 4th call in an hour. Jake looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Denise, 3 weeks ago, I was coordinating naval exercises involving 12 ships and 4,000 personnel. Today, I'm monitoring the activities of one unstable woman and her criminal associates. The skill set is the same, it's just the scale that's different. The next morning brought Master Chen's arrival with the completed crib. I'd expected something beautiful, but what he wheeled into our house was a masterpiece that made Mr. Henderson's original work look simple by comparison. The wood was a rich walnut with subtle grain patterns that seemed to shift in different light. The joinery was so precise that no screws or hardware were visible. The entire piece appeared to have grown as a single entity. But it was the small details that took my breath away. Tiny dolphins carved into the corner posts as a tribute to Jake's naval service, constellation patterns inlaid in mother-of-pearl along the headboard, and a hidden compartment in the base designed to hold meaningful family items. Commander Sullivan provided very specific requirements, Master Chen explained as he assembled the piece. He wanted something that would tell your child the story of their parents' love and strength, even before they could understand words. Jake stood watching the assembly process with his arms crossed, and I noticed he was taking mental notes of every component, every connection point. Even something as joyful as our baby's new crib was being analyzed through the lens of security and durability. Master Chen, what would it take for someone to damage this piece the way Madison damaged the original? Chen looked puzzled by the question. Commander, this joinery technique has been used for centuries in Japanese temples. The connections actually strengthen under stress. To cause significant damage, someone would need professional tools and considerable time. It's essentially destruction-proof for any casual attack. Jake nodded with satisfaction. Good, that was the point. That afternoon, we received an unexpected call from the rehabilitation facility in Richmond. The director, Dr. Amanda Foster, had updates on Madison's progress that were both encouraging and concerning. Madison has responded well to the structured environment and is engaging meaningfully with therapy, Dr. Foster reported during our video conference. However, she's also demonstrated some troubling patterns of manipulation and has attempted to contact family members despite the no-contact order. What kind of contact attempts? Jake asked, immediately alert. She convinced another patient to make calls on her behalf, claiming family emergency situations. She also attempted to send letters through visitors. We've intercepted all communications, but her persistence suggests she hasn't fully accepted the reality of her situation. I felt a familiar knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. Is she getting better or not? Mrs. Sullivan, addiction recovery isn't linear, and your sister's issues extend beyond substance abuse. She's displaying signs of narcissistic personality disorder, a need to control narratives, difficulty accepting responsibility, and persistent belief that rules don't apply to her. These traits make rehabilitation more challenging. Jake leaned forward in his chair. Dr. Foster, what's your professional assessment of Madison's potential for future violence or escalation? The question caught me off guard. I'd been thinking about Madison's drug problem and family manipulation, but Jake was considering physical threats I hadn't even imagined.
Dr. Foster was quiet for several seconds before responding. Commander Sullivan, I can't make predictions about specific violent acts, but I can tell you that Madison has expressed significant anger about what she perceives as unfair treatment. She views her current situation as punishment rather than help, and she blames you and your wife for ruining her life. So the answer is yes, she's still a threat. The answer is that she remains unpredictable and has not demonstrated genuine remorse or acceptance of responsibility for her actions. After the call ended, Jake was quiet for a long time, staring out our living room window at the street beyond. Jake, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that rehabilitation was the compassionate choice, but it might not have been the strategic one. Madison isn't getting better. She's getting angrier and more focused on us as the source of her problems. What does that mean? It means we need to prepare for the possibility that she'll complete the program and immediately resume her attempts to hurt our family. That evening, Jake made a series of phone calls that I wasn't allowed to hear. He spoke in clipped, military tones from his home office with the door closed. When he emerged 2 hours later, his expression was grim but determined. Denise, I need to show you something. He led me to his laptop, where he'd pulled up what looked like a comprehensive dossier. Madison's photograph was at the top, followed by pages of information I'd never seen before. Financial records, employment history, criminal associates, psychological evaluations, and detailed timelines of her recent activities. Jake, where did all this come from? Military intelligence maintains files on individuals who pose potential threats to active service members and their families. Madison's attack on you triggered a comprehensive background investigation. As I scrolled through the documents, a disturbing picture emerged. Madison's problems were deeper and more extensive than I'd realized. The drug use was recent, but patterns of manipulation, theft, and destructive behavior went back years. There were police reports I'd never heard about, employers who'd fired her for theft, former friends who'd obtained restraining orders. She stole from her last 3 employers, Jake pointed to a section of the report. Small amounts each time. Not enough to trigger immediate prosecution, but enough to establish a pattern of criminal behavior. Why didn't I know about any of this? Because Madison is skilled at compartmentalizing her victims. She kept her family relationships separate from her criminal activities. Your parents probably don't know about most of this either. The report also detailed Madison's relationship with Trevor Morrison, which had been far more serious than I'd understood. They hadn't just been dating, they'd been business partners in drug distribution, with Madison handling customer communications while Trevor managed supply chains. Jake, this says she was directly involved in selling drugs, not just using them, which explains why she was so comfortable having Morrison use our house for his operations. She wasn't an innocent victim. She was an active participant who saw an opportunity to expand their business. The final section of the report was the most chilling. It detailed Madison's statements during her arrest and early days in rehab, including recorded conversations where she'd discussed making Jake Sullivan pay and showing Denise what real consequences look like. "She's been planning some kind of retaliation from the beginning," I whispered. Jake closed the laptop and turned to face me directly. "Denise, I need you to understand something. Madison isn't just a troubled family member who made some bad choices. She's a genuine threat to our safety, and she's going to be released from that facility in 6 weeks. What are our options? We have several. Option 1, we relocate to a different state and start over with new identities through the Military Family Protection Program. Option 2, we stay here and implement comprehensive security measures that would essentially turn our lives into a fortress. Option 3, we address the threat directly before she's released." What does option 3 mean? Jake's expression was completely neutral, but something in his eyes made me understand that Commander Sullivan had resources and capabilities that went far beyond what he'd already demonstrated. Option 3 means ensuring that Madison's release from rehabilitation is followed immediately by her relocation to a federal facility where she can't hurt anyone for a very long time.
On what charges? The federal drug trafficking charges were suspended pending her cooperation and rehabilitation. If she violates any terms of her agreement, including the communications attempts Dr. Foster mentioned, those charges can be reinstated immediately. Federal drug trafficking with intent to distribute carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years. I stared at my husband, realizing that he'd been planning for this contingency since the beginning. Madison's rehabilitation wasn't just about helping her, it was about giving her enough rope to hang herself legally. "You've been waiting for her to violate the agreement." "I've been prepared for the possibility that she would prove herself incapable of change. Today's call confirmed that she has." 2 days later, Dr. Foster called with news that would seal Madison's fate forever. "Commander Sullivan, we've discovered that Madison has been manufacturing weapons in the facility's woodworking shop. She convinced the instructor that she was making a gift for her unborn nephew, but we found detailed plans for a crossbow hidden in her room during a routine inspection." Jake's jaw tightened as he listened on speakerphone. "What kind of plans?" "Professionally detailed blueprints with measurements, assembly instructions, and trajectory calculations. She also had a hand-drawn map of your neighborhood with your house circled and what appeared to be surveillance notes about your daily routines." My hands went instinctively to my belly, where our baby was now 23 weeks along and moving actively. Madison had been planning to hurt our child before they were even born. "Dr. Foster, I need copies of everything immediately. This escalates the situation beyond rehabilitation." "Already prepared, Commander. I'm transmitting everything to the federal authorities as we speak. Madison will be transferred to federal custody this afternoon." Within hours, Lieutenant Commander Davis was back at our door with updates that felt like scenes from a military thriller. "Mrs. Sullivan, we've executed search warrants on Madison's former associates and uncovered evidence of a broader conspiracy. She wasn't acting alone in planning retaliation against your family." "What kind of conspiracy?" "Trevor Morrison's drug network included several individuals with military grudges.
They viewed Commander Sullivan's successful disruption of their operation as a challenge to their credibility. Madison had convinced them that eliminating your family would send a message to other military personnel to stay out of civilian criminal enterprises. Jake stood perfectly still as he processed this information, and I could almost see his mind shifting into combat mode. How many individuals are we talking about? 7 confirmed conspirators, all now in federal custody. They had acquired weapons, surveillance equipment, and detailed intelligence about military family protection protocols. This was being planned as a coordinated attack. The scope of the threat was beyond anything I could have imagined. What started as my sister destroying a crib had evolved into a federal terrorism investigation involving multiple criminals with anti-military motivations. Commander Sullivan, Lieutenant Commander Davis continued, "I need to inform you that this case has been classified at the highest levels. The Attorney General's office is treating it as domestic terrorism targeting military families. Madison Fletcher will be charged under federal anti-terrorism statutes." What does that mean for sentencing? If convicted, she's looking at life in federal prison without possibility of parole. I felt dizzy as the reality hit me. My sister, the same person who used to braid my hair and share secrets with me as children, was now facing life in prison for planning to murder my family. That evening, as Jake and I sat in the nursery with Master Chen's beautiful crib glowing in the soft lamplight, I finally broke down. "Jake, how did we get here? How did a family argument turn into federal terrorism charges?" He pulled me close, and for the first time since his return, I felt like I was talking to my husband instead of Commander Sullivan. Denise made a series of choices that escalated everything. She chose to destroy our property instead of talking. She chose to threaten me instead of apologizing. She chose to conspire with criminals instead of accepting help. At every decision point, she picked the path that led to more violence and more danger for our family. But she's still my sister.
No, she's not. The Madison you grew up with, the one who braided your hair, that person died a long time ago. What's left is someone who was willing to murder your unborn child to satisfy her need for revenge. 3 weeks later, we received the final updates on Madison's case. She had accepted a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty, agreeing to life in federal prison in exchange for providing complete information about the terrorist network she'd helped organize. The other conspirators received sentences ranging from 25 years to life, effectively dismantling what prosecutors called the first known anti-military domestic terrorist cell operating within civilian drug networks. Trevor Morrison, as the network's leader, received the death penalty. Our baby was born 4 months later, a healthy daughter we named Hope Elizabeth Sullivan. She slept peacefully in Master Chen's incredible crib, completely unaware that she was surrounded by protection systems that would make government officials envious. Jake had installed security measures that I still don't fully understand, but I know that our house is monitored by multiple agencies, our movements are tracked by military intelligence, and any threat to our family would trigger immediate federal response. The most unexpected development came 6 months after Hope's birth, when I received a letter from federal prison. Madison had written to me from her maximum security facility, and the contents were nothing like what I expected. The letter was short and carefully worded, clearly reviewed by prison officials before being sent. "Denise, I know you'll probably never read this, but I needed to write it anyway. The doctors here say I have something called antisocial personality disorder, which explains why I could never understand why my actions hurt people. I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that seeing Hope's birth announcement in the newspaper was the first time I felt genuine happiness in years. Maybe that means there's still something human left in me. Take care of your family. They're lucky to have you protecting them. Madison." Jake read the letter and handed it back to me without comment. I asked him what he thought it meant. "It means the federal prison system is doing its job. Madison is contained, neutralized, and no longer a threat to society. Whether she's genuinely remorseful or just manipulating the system for better treatment doesn't matter anymore. Don't you think people can change? I think some people can change when they face real consequences for their actions.
Madison is facing life in prison because she chose to threaten my family. If that leads to genuine self-reflection, good for her. But it doesn't change the fact that she'll never be in a position to hurt anyone again. My parents eventually reached out, months after Hope's birth. They had learned about the full scope of Madison's crimes from news reports and wanted to apologize for not supporting me during the crisis. The conversation was awkward and painful, filled with their guilt and my lingering resentment. We had no idea how serious it was, my mother said during our first phone call in over a year. We thought it was just a sister drama that got out of hand. Mom, she threatened to kill your granddaughter before she was even born. I know, and I'll never forgive myself for defending her. Can you ever forgive us? The honest answer was that I didn't know. Forgiveness would take time, and rebuilding trust would require them to demonstrate that they'd learned from their mistakes. But for Hope's sake, I was willing to try. Today, as I write this story, Hope is 2 years old and sleeping peacefully in the crib that survived a terrorist plot. Jake has been promoted to captain and commands his own naval installation. We live quietly, securely, and happily. Sometimes people ask me if I regret pressing charges against Madison, if I wish I'd handled things differently. The answer is always the same. Madison made her choices, and we made ours. She chose destruction, threats, and violence. We chose protection, justice, and family. The beautiful crib in Hope's room isn't just furniture. It's a symbol of what happens when someone tries to destroy something precious and discovers they're facing people who will move heaven and earth to protect what they love. Madison learned that when you attack a military family, you don't just face one person's anger, you face the full power of institutions designed to protect those who serve our country. She destroyed a crib and thought she'd won. Instead, she lost everything. And we built something stronger than what she tried to tear down. Hope sleeps safely every night, surrounded by love, protection, and the quiet strength of parents who will never let anyone hurt their family again. That's how you handle someone who tries to destroy your dreams. You show them what real power looks like, and you build something better than what they broke. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.